Alright, so we are starting volume this week, and the first video we're doing is volume of rectangular prisms. The reason we're doing this is it's something that you've seen before, it's super easy, and it's a really good intro to volume. So the first thing's pretty straightforward and simple. I'm telling you what volume is. So volume is how much a 3D figure will hold. And in some cases, we're going to think about it as cubes, or you can think about it as cubes. And in other cases, you'll want to think about it like liquid or filling up a 3D figure. So the first formula we're going to talk about is just a general formula, and that's volume. So when you have V, remember that stands for volume, equals, we have this capital B, and that stands for the area of the base. You've already dealt with the capital B before, so it shouldn't be anything new to you, times this H, and this is just our height. So this is general for the volume that we're going to deal with, especially with prisms. Now the second formula we have is specific to rectangular prisms, cubes, stuff like that. And that volume is equal to length times width times height. And so we'll go ahead and label that. Your L, remember, is length. W is width. And again, your H is height. So when you look at this, remember up at the top, your general formula was the area of the base. And when I look at a rectangle, so if I had a rectangle like this, you have your length and your width. Remember, to find that area, you would do length times width. So that's why over here in our rectangular prisms volume formula, you have length times width. That capital B is replaced by length times width. And then, of course, you still have height at the end, just like the general formula has. So that's how it breaks down into the rectangular prisms. Alright, so real quick, because these videos are a little long due to examples, I am going to tell you what the examples consist of. That way you can choose what you need to do. I would suggest doing at least one of each, and if you understand it, then you're good to go. If not, then you'll want to keep doing the other examples. So examples 1 and 2 in this video are word problems. So I give you the measurements and I ask you to find the volume. Examples 3 through 6 are picture diagrams, so you're going to find the volume from that. And examples 7 and 8, I ask you to work backwards in word problem form. So like if you just want to do one of each, you would do like 1, 3, 7. Now, if you understand it after that, cool, go do the assignment. If not, keep watching and get more help on those. So example 1, I'm asking you to find the volume of a rectangular prism with a length of 9 inches, a width of 4 inches, and a height of 3 inches. So once we introduce all the shapes, all the volume shapes, you're going to ask yourself, which 3D figure is this? In this example, I do give it to you, and I tell you it's a rectangular prism. So the first thing you want to do is write out the volume formula for that. And we just covered it, and I told you the volume for a rectangular prism is length times width times height. Now I need each of these things in order to find my volume. So when I look here, I tell you that the length is 9 inches, the width is 4 inches, and the height is 3 inches. I made it super simple for you in this example. So going back over here to our formula, we're going to fill in the numbers. My length in the word problem, I told you it was 9, times my width, I told you was 4, times my height, I told you was 3. Now your last step to find all this, we're just going to multiply everything together. I'm going to do it in 2 steps, but you can do it all at once, of course. I'm first going to do 9 times 4, and that gives me 36 times 3. I haven't done this last part, so I need to drop it back down. So that last part, I do 36 times 3, and I get 108. And I'm going to bring down the measurement, and it is inches. Since we're now in volume, it's not squared. It's actually going to be cubed. So now example 2, I tell you to find the volume of a cube with an edge length of 5 centimeters. You need to remember that a cube is a type of rectangular prism, and since we know that, our formula is volume equals length times width times height. Now we can write this in another way because we know that in a cube, looks something like this. I know all of these sides, all these edges are the same length. So that means my length is equal to my width, which is equal to my height. All 3 of these measurements are the same in a cube. So I can write it as length times width times height, but I can also replace all of these with S's because they stand for side length. So S times S times S, or if you want, you can write it as S cubed. That's S multiplied by itself 3 times. So right over here to the right, I went ahead and wrote out both different ways we can do it. And what's going to happen is I'm going to fill it in for both formulas just so you can see that it works the same. So I know the edge length is 5 centimeters from the word problem. So when I come over here, since length is equal to width is equal to height, my volume is 5 times 5 times 5. So that's the first formula. I'm going to go ahead and multiply it out, do the first part. 5 times 5 gives me 25 times 5, and that gives me 125 centimeters cubed. So that's my volume right now using the original formula. Now I'm going to use the second formula that I gave you as a shortcut for cubes. So volume is equal to 5 cubed, and 5 cubed, all that is 5 times 5 times 5, which is what this formula over here was. So I know 5 cubed is 125. I know my volume is centimeters cubed. And when I look, both of these answers are the same. So when you're using a cube or when you're given a cube, you can still do length times width times height or S cubed. Either one works. Alright, so example 3 is where we're starting to do the actual diagrams. I'll give you a picture and I say just find the volume. So remember, it's a rectangular prism, so the volume is length times width times height. If you can't remember this, remember your formula will always be the area of the base times the height. In this case, since it is a rectangle, I know the area of the base formula is length times width. That's why we spread it out. So I first need to look, in these scenarios, I'm going to just pick a rectangle. So I'm going to go with this top rectangle. I'm actually going to come over here below it and draw it out so you can see. The very top was 10 inches and the side was 12 inches. So from here, I need to assign which is my length, which is my width. I'm just going to go ahead at the top. This is going to be called our width, and to the right is going to be our length. So I can go ahead and fill in 2 of my measurements. I know my length from the picture is 12 inches, and I know my width is 10 inches. Now the last thing you need to look at is the height. And remember that height connects the 2 bases. So whatever you called your base, whatever line, whatever edge connects that, that's going to be your height. So when I look at this drawing, I see that my height is 4. So now I can go ahead and carry out some of that multiplication. 12 times 10 gives me 120. You bring down that times 4. And then your last step is 120 times 4, which leaves you with 480 inches cubed as your volume. Now example 4 is a cube, and the reason I know that is when I look over here at all of these sides, they all measure 5. So I know this is a cube. I'm going to go ahead and use that shortcut formula I gave you where volume is equal to side cubed. If you don't remember how to do that, you can still use the regular rectangular formula, which is length times width times height. Now I'm just going to plug everything in. Since there's only one measurement, it makes it a lot simpler. So volume is equal to 5 cubed. We did this actually as our example for the cube. Not sure how it came back up. Remember, that's 5 times 5 times 5. When you plug that into the calculator, or if you already know it, you should end up with 125 kilometers cubed as your volume for this cube. Alright, so example 5, I'm asking again to find the volume. This is going to be another rectangular prism because, of course, that's what this video is. So again, I'm going to go ahead and color in that bottom base. That way I know what I'm referring to. And I'm going to drop down and draw it here at the bottom. Rectangles are a little rough, but... So that bottom measurement is going to be 9, and then the measurement to the right is going to be 12. So remember, I am going to label my 9 as my width, my W, and my 12 as my length. I'm just going to keep consistent with that. That way there's no confusion on what's what. And remember, your volume for rectangular prisms formula is length times width times height. So I already have my length, I have my width. The last thing I need to do is find my height. I look at the line that's connecting my 2 bases together, so it's this one. Its measurement is 11, so I know that 11 is my height. I can now go ahead and fill everything in for my formula. My length, which is down at the bottom, I already found it to be 12, times my width. is 9 times my height is 11. So the first thing we're going to do is add 12 times 9. And when I do that in my calculator, it gives me 108 times 11. So don't forget, you have to drop down that bottom or the third part. Just because you've done the first part doesn't mean you're done. And then your last step is to do that 108 times 11. And it gives you 1,188 meters cubed for your volume. All right, remember example 6, that is our last picture example. So if you're still here, cool, we're going to work through it. Again, I'm going to draw or color that bottom part. I'm going to bring down the rectangle so I can see it. My bottom measurement is 3, and the measurement to the left is 7. When I label this, remember, the top and the bottom, we're just going to keep with width. And the left and the right, we're just going to keep with length. And then the last step to find all of our measurements, we look at the side that's connecting my top and my bottom bases. And that measurement is going to end up being our height. So in this example, it's 6. So going back to our formula, volume is equal to length times width times height. I have all 3 of those measurements, so I'm good to go. My length here is 7 times my width is 3. And then finally, my height is 6. Nope. So again, my first step, I'm going to take the first 2, 7 times 3. That gives me 21. I need to drop down that times 6 at the very end. And then, of course, your last step is to do that 21 times 6. When you do that in a calculator, if you do it by hand or in your head, you should get 126 yards cubed as your volume. Alright, so I told you example 7 and 8, they're word problems, but we're working backwards. So in these ones, I'm giving you the volume, I'm giving you some sort of measurement, and I'm asking you to find one of the missing variables. So here, the volume of a cube is 8 feet cubed. Find the length of the cube. And of course, by length, I mean the length of the edge of one of the faces. So I didn't give you any measurements here because I'm wanting you to use a formula, volume equals side cubed. Now I could use volume equals length times width times height, but I don't know any of those, so it's going to make it really difficult. It could be any combination of numbers. But here, since it is a cube, I know it's side cubed, so I'm going to fill in what I know. I tell you the volume is 8 feet cubed, so this V is going to be replaced with 8. And it's still equal to side cubed. Now what this is saying is I need a number that when I multiply it by itself 3 times, I'm going to get 8. Now you could do guess and check if you wanted to. So I'm going to start with 1. So if I filled in 1 for all 3 of these, 1 times 1 equals 8. When I simplify the left side, I get 1, but I know 1 does not equal 8. So I know the side length isn't 1. This is a no-go. Now, after 1, I'm going to go up. I'm going to say, okay, maybe it's 3. Maybe I started too small. So 3 times 3 times 3 equals 8. 3 times 3 gives me 9 times 3 is 27. And 27 still does not equal 8. But 27 is way too big. And 1 was way too small. So that means my answer is between 1 and 3. And there's only one number that is between them, and that's 2. So for this last part of guessing and checking, you still have side times side times side equals 8. So we're going to try 2. 2 times 2 times 2 equals 8. Again, 2 times 2 gives me that 4. 4 times 2 does give me 8. And of course, 8 is equal to 8. So by guessing and checking, I get that the side length is equal to 2. Now, if you didn't know how to do it mathematically, all you do is take the cube root of each side. We did this when we were taking the square root of numbers. The cube root of 8 is actually 2, which gives me to the same point. So I know the length of my side of my cube is 2. Now, if you have to do guess and check, that's fine. If you can do it straight math, that's cool too. And then our last example, I tell you the volume of a rectangular prism is 84 inches cubed. If the length is 4 inches and the width is 3 inches, I want you to find the height. So I'm going to map everything out. I know it's a rectangular prism, so volume is equal to length times width times height. So I'm going to underline everything I'm given in the word problem. The volume is 84, the length is 4, the width is 3, and I don't know what my height is. Now I can go to my formula and I can start filling stuff in. The volume is going to be replaced by 84. Our length is replaced by 4. The width is replaced by 3. And I don't know what my height is, so I'm going to keep it as h. So now we're going to start simplifying stuff. We don't do anything to that 84, so we're just going to rewrite it. But I can do 4 times 3. And when I do that, I get 12 times h, but I'm going to write it as just 12h. Remember, when a number and a letter or two letters or two numbers are just stuck together, that means multiply. And in order to just find h, we have to do the opposite. So the opposite of multiplication is division. We're going to divide both sides by 12. When I do that on the right side, they cancel out, and I'm just left with h. And on the left side, I have 84 divided by 12. When I do that, I end up with 7 as my height. So I see that my height is 7. I'm going to go ahead and check everything. So my volume is length times width times height. In order to do that, all you have to do, of course, is plug everything in. My length is 4 times my height. My width is 3 times my height. I just found to be 7. 4 times 3 gives me 12 times 7, which does give me 84. And that is what my volume started out to be. So in this case, we do find that our height is 7 inches. You do have an assignment. It is 6 problems. It includes 2 word problems, 2 backwards words problems, and 2 pictures. So you need to go ahead and work on that on Google Slides. If you have any questions, send me a text or remind, a comment on Google Classroom, or attend my tutorials. Remember, those are Monday through Friday at 9 a.m. and 2 p.m. on Google Meets.